3 nights that prove home isn't always safe. True stories of intruders, robberies, and violence. My name is Marcus. I'm 27 years old, and I need to tell you about 3 separate incidents that have forever changed how I view safety security and the concept of being protected in your own home. 3 nights that proved to me that danger doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always come with warning. Sometimes it just appears. Sometimes it waits for you. If you love true horror stories about home invasions, violent attacks, and the kind of real-world experiences that make you question whether you're ever truly safe anywhere, hit like and subscribe right now. And keep listening, because these 3 stories will teach you that sometimes the worst threats come from people who know exactly what they're doing. And sometimes they come from people so lost that they don't even know who they're attacking. Story. The intruder who was waiting in my bedroom. Let me set the scene for you. I'd just gotten back from vacation with a few of my friends that I've known since high school. We'd all scattered across the country after graduation. Most of us live far away from each other now, so meeting up once a year is basically the only way we stay connected. It's become a tradition, a lifeline to the friendships we formed all those years ago. I'd been gone for a full week, 7 days away from home. 7 days of traveling, staying in hotels, driving between cities, living out of a suitcase. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I was absolutely exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that runs deep into your bones. The kind that makes every movement feel like you're moving in slow motion. I was looking forward to nothing more than resting at home for the weekend before I had to go back to work on Monday morning. I didn't have big plans. I didn't want to go out. I just wanted to be home, in my own space, in my own bed. When I got inside my house, I didn't even bother to unpack anything. Not a single thing. My suitcases could stay by the door. My dirty laundry could wait. Everything could wait. I was too exhausted to care about any of it. I walked over to the kitchen and grabbed a couple of snacks to substitute for dinner. I wasn't hungry enough for a real meal. Just something light. Just something to take the edge off my hunger. Then I turned off the lights and laid down on the couch. I didn't bother with the television either. I had no interest in watching anything. I had no energy for that. I planned on just eating and scrolling on my phone for a few minutes, then falling asleep. That was the entire agenda for my evening. After a while, my eyes got heavy. Really heavy. The kind of heavy where you can barely keep them open. I put my phone down on the coffee table and closed my eyes. The exhaustion was overwhelming. My body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Sleep came quickly, deeply, completely. It was late though. I don't recall ever looking at the exact time before I fell asleep. I just remember closing my eyes, and then nothing. Pure darkness. Pure sleep. Sometime later in the night, though, I woke up. And that's when everything changed. It didn't seem to be for any particular reason. I didn't hear anything. There was no loud noise, no crash, no sound that jolted me awake. But my eyes shot open and my head immediately went into alert mode. It was a strange feeling. The kind of feeling that makes your body tense up. My entire system seemed to recognize that something was wrong. I sat up on the couch and rubbed my eyes, trying to figure out what had pulled me from such a deep sleep. My heart was already starting to race. My body was already on edge. I grabbed my phone and got up to go to bed. I figured maybe my brain felt weird about me sleeping in the living room. Maybe my body was telling me that I needed to get to an actual bed. Walking over to the stairs to head upstairs to my bedroom, I saw the back porch light was still on. This wasn't shocking at all. I'd left it on while I went on vacation. I did that intentionally. Leaving lights on in a house makes it look like someone is home, makes it look occupied, makes it less attractive to potential burglars who prey on empty houses. As I reached toward the switch to flick the light off, though my eyes shifted to the back door, and my entire body went cold. It was unlocked. I immediately got a bad feeling in my gut, a feeling that started in my stomach and spread through my entire body like ice water. A feeling that made my hands shake and my breathing become shallow. I stood there staring at the door, trying to process what I was seeing, trying to make sense of it. I thought maybe I was crazy. Maybe I was still tired and misremembering things. Maybe I had locked it and just forgot. I pulled on the door handle, and sure enough, it opened. The door swung open freely. No resistance, no lock preventing it from moving, just open. Like it had been left that way, or like someone had deliberately unlocked it from the inside. I quickly shut it and locked it. My hands were trembling. The lock engaged with a soft click, but something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. Had I forgotten to lock it before leaving? There was absolutely no way. I checked every door and window multiple times before leaving. It's a habit of mine. I go through the house systematically before any extended trip. Living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, every single lock, every single window. I make sure they're all secured. I went around the house and turned on all the downstairs lights. Every single light. I looked around carefully, trying to spot anything missing, but nothing that I could notice was gone. The television was still there. The laptop was still on the desk. My guitar was still in the corner. Everything appeared to be exactly where I left it. Really unsure about the situation I was in, I went back to the door and tested the lock again. With the door locked, I was able to pull it open. The lock didn't hold. It didn't engage properly. I looked closer and could tell that a part of the latch was broken off. It was damaged, fractured. Someone had forced this door open. Someone had used enough force to break the lock mechanism. There wasn't a single part of me that wasn't terrified in that moment. My heart was pounding in my chest so hard I thought it might burst. My palms were sweating. My mouth was dry. I knew the chances of whoever had broken in still being in the house were probably slim. Statistically, they had likely broken in, realized no one was home and left, taken some things, or maybe not, moved on to someone else's house. But I could not sleep. I could not rest. Not until I was absolutely certain. Not until I had checked every room. Not until I knew for sure that I was alone. This was the exact moment when I should have called the cops. I know that now. Looking back on it with the clarity of time, the smart thing to do would have been to get in my car, drive to a safe location, and call 911. Let the professionals handle it. Let someone trained to deal with this situation take it from there. But I didn't do that. I don't know why. Maybe I was just too tired to think straight. Maybe I was just really confident that nobody was still there. Maybe I had some false sense of bravery that made me think I could handle it myself. So I went upstairs to check the rooms myself. I switched on the hallway light. I could see that all the doors were closed exactly as I had left them before vacation. Nothing appeared out of place. Nothing seemed disturbed. My master bedroom was on the far end of the hallway with a bathroom and a spare bedroom before it. I checked the bathroom first, opening the door slowly and taking a quick look inside. It was empty. No signs of anything out of place. No shower curtain moved. No medicine cabinet opened. No evidence that anyone had been in there. Then I walked over to the spare bedroom. I used this room mainly for storage, so there were a lot of boxes and furniture scattered around. The walls were lined with shelves. The closet was completely stuffed with things I hadn't used in years. As I walked through the room looking behind the boxes and the furniture, trying to see if anyone could be hiding in there, I suddenly heard something. Very quiet footsteps, very soft, almost like whoever was making them was trying not to be heard. The footsteps were coming from the master bedroom. They were deliberate, measured. Someone was walking across the room. The footsteps went across the master bedroom and then toward the doorway. Then they stopped. It was as if me and this intruder were just listening, waiting. Both of us frozen, both of us holding our breath, both of us waiting for someone to make the first move. The anticipation and anxiety made fear rush through my whole body like nothing I've ever experienced before. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. It was thundering in my ears. It was so loud I was absolutely certain the intruder could hear it too. I stood in the middle of the spare bedroom staring at the doorway leading to the hall. Every muscle in my body was tense. Every nerve was on fire. Then I heard the master bedroom door creak open. The sound of the hinges moving, the sound of wood scraping against the frame. Slow, deliberate, intentional. Whoever was in there was opening the door. Another second of silence passed, a second that felt like an eternity, a second where anything could happen. Then, loud footsteps sprinted down the hall, fast, panicked, running at full speed. A figure ran past the doorway where I was standing. I caught just a glimpse of them, a shadow, a silhouette, not enough to identify them, not enough to describe them accurately. I just froze. I couldn't get myself to move or do anything. I was completely frozen. I could only stand there listening to my heart beating rapidly as the footsteps ran through the house, down the stairs, toward the back door, out into the night. I heard the back door slam open, the sound of someone running across the porch. Then nothing, just silence. Still in a state of shock, I pulled my phone out and called the police. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the number. I told the operator everything, that I had come home from vacation, that my back door was broken, that someone had been waiting inside my house, that they had just run out. The police arrived within 10 minutes. They searched my entire house. They searched the yard. They found no signs of anyone still being there, but they did find other evidence. The detective told me something that made my blood run absolutely cold. This was likely not a simple robbery. They found no signs of someone having stayed there for long. So whoever it was had broken in earlier that day, while I was still gone, while the house was empty. But they had waited. They had hidden in my bedroom all night long, waiting for me to come home, waiting for me to walk through that bedroom door without expecting anything. And who knows what they had planned to do if I'd walked through that door. The detective said that if I hadn't woken up for some reason, if I had decided to go straight to bed instead of falling asleep on the couch, if I had checked that back door 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, everything could have been completely different. I never found out who broke into my house. No arrests were ever made. No one was ever caught. To this day, I don't know who was hiding in my bedroom waiting for me. I don't know what they intended to do. I don't know if they would have hurt me or robbed me or something far worse. All I know is that I was one small decision away from a completely different outcome. One small moment away from my life changing forever. Story 2. The Coordinated Gas Station. Robbery. I worked at a gas station for a couple of years in my mid-20s. I've always had jobs that barely let me scrape by, so working at a gas station wasn't much better or worse than many of my other previous employments. It was just another job, another way to pay the bills. If you've ever worked at or been to a gas station at night, then you know that there's always only one employee working. Maybe larger gas stations in bigger cities have multiple employees, but with my experience at this particular location, it was always only one person. There was never really anything to do. So you really only needed a single person on the night shift, but it definitely made it eerie sometimes while being there alone. I'd stand and look out the window by the counter, seeing only the dim lights by the pumps with a field of darkness behind them. Just me and the darkness, and the occasional car pulling up for gas or snacks. The location of the station I worked at was on the edge of town, a few minutes away from any other buildings. We got a lot of traffic from truck drivers and cars that would travel between the cities, which was very common for work in the area. People were always passing through, coming and going. When this incident happened to me, though, it was the beginning of spring and had been raining quite a lot. The kind of rain that doesn't stop. The kind that makes you want to stay inside with a warm drink and a good book. What's great about when it rains is that most people choose to pay with a card instead of cash, which means far fewer people would actually enter the store. They'd just swipe at the pump and drive away, which meant fewer interactions, fewer problems, fewer variables. It was raining heavily that night, and very few cars were even coming up to fill their tanks. I guess we weren't busy in the daytime either, because all the shelves were fully stocked, leaving me with absolutely nothing to do but sit there and wait for the clock to run down. Just waiting, watching the minutes pass slowly. Past midnight, I was seeing maybe 1 or 2 cars pull up every hour. One man actually came in to pick up a pack of smokes, but that was it. Just one customer in hours. After that, I was fighting hard to stay awake. It wasn't even that I was tired. I was just extremely bored. The kind of bored that makes time move at a snail's pace. The kind of bored that makes you start questioning your life choices. But then a car rolled into the station, followed by another. Then another. What are the odds, right? Suddenly, after hours of nothing, 3 cars pull up at once, all of them parking near the pumps. I started paying attention, watching through the side window with newfound interest. My curiosity was piqued. Why were so many people showing up at once in the middle of the night? None of the people got out. They all just stayed in their cars right next to the pumps. The engines were idling. The headlights were on. They weren't pumping gas. They were just sitting there, waiting. After a few minutes, I thought I might actually have to go out there and tell them that it's dangerous to leave their cars on next to the pumps. That's a safety hazard. That's against the rules. But then, a few doors opened and a few people got out. 5 people total exited the cars. They were all men and were wearing thick winter-type jackets despite the mild spring weather. Leaving their cars on still, they began walking up toward the store. Toward me. Their movements were deliberate, coordinated, like they had practiced this, like they knew exactly what they were going to do. All of the men made direct eye contact with me as they entered. All 5 of them stared straight at me while I stood at the counter. They held my gaze. They let me know that they knew I was there. I'm not going to try to make myself sound brave or anything, because I was terrified at this point. Absolutely terrified. My stomach had dropped. My heart was pounding. My palms were sweating. Just the fact that they left their cars running was a clear enough sign of what was about to happen. This wasn't a casual gas station visit. This was coordinated. This was planned. This was a robbery. One of the men came up to the counter while the other four scattered around the store. They moved with purpose. They knew what they wanted. While the man at the counter spoke with me, trying to distract me, the other four were grabbing handfuls of product and shoving them into their backpacks. Cigarettes, energy drinks, snacks, anything they could get their hands on. The confidence they had about what they were doing was the scariest part. They didn't even yell commands at me. They didn't hold me at gunpoint. They didn't threaten me or act aggressive toward me. They just went about their business like I wasn't even there, like I was irrelevant. That made me absolutely terrified. Probably more so than if I actually was held at gunpoint, because it meant they didn't see me as a threat. They didn't see me as someone worth acknowledging. I was just an obstacle, a minor inconvenience that they were willing to tolerate. "How's your night going, bud?" The man at the counter spoke with confidence. So much confidence. Like he had done this 100 times before and knew exactly how it would play out. I looked around his shoulders, seeing the other men grabbing merchandise and putting it into their bags. Everything going through my head, I never even answered the man. I just stood there in silence. "We'll be gone in a couple of minutes," he said with a smile. His smile was so casual, so confident, so completely devoid of any concern for how I felt or what I was going through. "Everything will be fine." One of the other men came up and jumped over the counter. He gestured at me to open the register. I did as he said, letting him take the cash from the register. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely function. Being at night, though, there was barely anything in there. Maybe $100 at most. The cash drawer was designed to stay mostly empty for security reasons, to prevent large-scale robbery losses. The guy held up the few dollar bills, showing them to the man on the other side of the counter. He looked disappointed. "Where's the rest?" he demanded. "We don't have any more," I said quietly. "My boss makes sure it's mostly empty before we switch shifts." The men did not look satisfied with that answer. They stared at me for what felt like an entire minute of silence where anything could happen, where I could get hurt, where this could go from robbery to something much worse. But then he smiled. "Have a good night, bud." He motioned to the others, and they walked back to their cars and drove off without hesitation. They just got in their vehicles and left, like nothing had happened, like they hadn't just robbed me. Without hesitation, I called the police. I was almost 100% sure that they were about to hit a nearby gas station in an effort to grab more cash. I alerted them of my concerns, and they sent multiple officers to that location as well as an officer to mine. It turned out I was right. They did go to the neighboring gas station, but the officers arrived too late. The worker there had been robbed clean. He had some mild injuries from a confrontation, but from what I heard, he was mostly okay. But he got hurt, and maybe that was partly because of me. Because I didn't warn him sooner. Because I didn't do something more. It's been years since this happened, and thankfully, I never saw them again. Though I'm unsure if they ever got caught and arrested. I never found out. I feel really guilty for some reason about that other gas station worker that got hurt. Mostly because I didn't get physically harmed in any way. I walked away without a scratch. But he didn't. He got hit. He got hurt. And maybe that was partly my fault. Sometimes I think it's just best that you accept you're in a bad situation and that there's nothing you can do. That you cooperate. That you live to fight another day. Story 3. The Man with the Hammer. I'm 22 years old, and this encounter happened a few months ago. I live in an apartment just outside of my college campus. It's a fairly nice newer apartment building, but the surrounding area is pretty shady. I don't spend any time around there, though. I just drive down to my campus and back. I hadn't had any bad experiences before this incident, so I didn't ever find myself worried about much of anything. I felt relatively safe. It was my own space, my own sanctuary. It was a Friday afternoon and I had just gotten back from school. I stayed late to get some extra studying done because I had an exam coming up. So it was around 7 o'clock when I pulled into the small parking lot and headed inside the building. Walking inside, I went up the stairs to my room on the 4th floor and went inside. I dropped my school bag right by the shoe rack I kept next to the door. I was exhausted. School had been long. Studying had been intense. I grabbed a pre-made salad from the fridge and sat on the couch to watch something while I ate. I wasn't in the mood for cooking. I just wanted something quick and easy. While scrolling through YouTube on the TV looking for something to watch, a very loud sudden thump came from the room below me. It wasn't an alarming sound necessarily, but more just surprising and completely out of nowhere. I paused what I was doing and listened carefully. I didn't recognize the sound. It wasn't something I had heard before from that apartment below me. I listened for a moment, then continued with my search for a video to watch. It was probably nothing. My neighbor probably just dropped something, moved something. These apartment walls weren't very thick, so sounds traveled easily. A few minutes later, that same sound came from below me again. That same loud thump. I paused the video and sat there, patiently waiting for it to happen again. I was more curious than anything. What was my neighbor doing down there? After a couple of minutes, it happened again. But this time, it was louder, and it even caused the walls to vibrate and shake. My drink actually sloshed a little in the cup. It was more obviously someone banging something against the wall, but I didn't know what or why. I waited again, but after a bit of no further sounds, I just continued about my night. It was probably fine. Maybe he was rearranging furniture, moving things around, getting ready for something. I'm not sure how much time passed after that, but it wasn't too long. Maybe 40 or 50 minutes. When I heard a knock by the front door. I was in the kitchen, which was right next to the door, so I knew the knock didn't come from my door, but probably my neighbor's door. Listening more carefully, I could hear a man mumbling something. It sounded like he was having a whole conversation with himself, just whispering and mumbling random sentences under his breath. His voice was slurred, unclear, like he was talking in his sleep or under the influence of something. I won't lie, it kind of creeped me out. When the mumbling stopped, I went over to the door and looked out the peephole to see if he was gone. The dude was standing in the dark hallway right in front of my door. He was looking down at the knob as if contemplating whether or not to try opening it. His hand was hovering near the door handle. I backed up, trying to quietly walk back to the couch to grab my phone. Just in case. Just in case things escalated. But almost immediately, the guy banged on my door. Hard. He began mumbling again, making me believe he was definitely on some hard drugs or something. His movements were jerky, unpredictable. He didn't seem to be in full control of himself. I took my phone and held it tightly, unsure of what exactly my next move was going to be. I didn't know if he was just some harmless druggie or if he had worse intentions, but I felt fairly safe where I was in my apartment with the door locked, so I held off on doing anything. I was hoping he would just go away, that he would lose interest in my door and move on. After maybe 30 seconds, though, the man banged on my door again. this time yelling something at me, though it was heavily slurred and unrecognizable. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but his tone was aggressive, demanding. I ran to my bedroom and called the police. I didn't know what he wanted, but the fact that he wasn't leaving made me pretty scared of what he wanted. The operator said they were a few minutes out and asked if I wanted to stay on the line. I told them I was okay and hung up. Just then, the guy outside the door started banging even harder. He was definitely hitting the door with something heavy. It was too powerful of hits for it to just be his hands. It sounded more like he was trying to break the door down at this point. I grabbed a baseball bat from the corner of my room and prepared to hold my ground as the man continued with his efforts. If he got through that door, I would swing with everything I had. This went on for what felt like forever. Banging, yelling, more banging. But then I saw the reflection of flashing blue lights outside the window, red and blue, strobing. The police were here. A minute later, an officer called out something in the stairway, making the man by the door stop. His efforts ceased. The banging stopped. The yelling stopped. Everything went quiet. I heard them take the guy down. I heard him being restrained. I heard the sounds of an arrest happening just outside my door. I opened the front door to talk to the police. There were huge dents and cracks on my door. The wooden surface was splintered. The frame was damaged. It was clear he had been hitting it with something. A hammer, a crowbar, something heavy and solid. But what I found out next was extremely tragic and awful. The officer told me that the room below mine, the room that had been making all those thumping sounds, had a young lady living in it. She was found unconscious due to heavy blows to the head. The officer's expression was grave, serious, like he was delivering the worst news possible. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to recover. She passed away at the hospital. Her front door was wide open with no signs of damage. So it's likely she answered the door unknowingly of who was there. She just opened the door to see who was making all that noise. And he was waiting on the other side. After beating the lady, he had smashed several holes in the walls of her apartment using a large hammer. The police found him holding the hammer while arresting him. He was heavily under the influence of drugs and alcohol. He apparently told the officers that he was looking for a stash of drugs hidden in the walls. Like the walls themselves would hold something valuable, but there was nothing. No signs of anything being hidden in any of the rooms after they were searched. The guy likely just made it up in his head while drugged up. A delusion, a fantasy, something his altered mind created. What's terrifying is that he was really close to doing the same thing to me as he did to the lady below me. If I had opened the door, if I had been curious about what the noise was, if I had gone down to complain about the thumping sounds, I would have been found instead of her. The officer said if things had gone just slightly differently, I could have been the one who didn't make it out alive. I feel really bad for her, though. Probably just being nice and opening the door. No idea that her fate was behind it. No idea that one simple decision would cost her everything. What these stories mean. These three experiences have fundamentally changed how I view the world. They've changed how I think about safety. They've changed how I understand the fragility of life and how quickly everything can change. The first incident taught me that my home isn't always my sanctuary. That danger can be waiting for me inside the walls I thought protected me. That someone can be planning something I can't even comprehend. The second incident taught me that sometimes you can do everything right and still feel wrong about the outcome. That you can cooperate and still feel guilty. That survival sometimes means accepting situations you can't control. The third incident taught me that sometimes the smallest decisions can mean the difference between life and death. Whether to open a door, whether to go investigate a noise, whether to leave for the evening early. I'm more cautious now, more aware, more vigilant about the people around me and the spaces I inhabit. But I'm also more paranoid, more anxious, more afraid, because I've learned that danger isn't always dramatic. It's not always what you expect. Sometimes it comes quietly. Sometimes it comes from someone so far gone they don't even know what they're doing. Sometimes it comes from people who are waiting for you. And sometimes you're just lucky enough to survive.